Anne Elizabeth, I take it that the BBC and CBS wouldn't be digging out the Hitler footage if they didn't think this election result was consequential. Is it?
It's very consequential because, first of all, it's well worth reminding everyone that Giorgia Meloni, who apparently is going to be the new president of the Council of Ministers, that's Prime Minister in Italy, will be the first Prime Minister elected of the last 8. Because there have been coalitions, there have been people appointed, there have been people who became Prime Minister of Italy after yet another cabinet failed, who weren't even in Parliament. And the moment there was news that there was a groundswell at the polls, I suspected that she would get in. And I suspected that she would get in because she's articulating a number of things in a much more moderate way that you would believe considering the coverage. And she was saying things that are unpalatable to say. She is an interesting woman. She's the equivalent of a Cockney in Britain. She hasn't been to university. She has a Rome accent of the suburbs. She is much more efficient and hardworking than her right-wing predecessors, either Salvini or a very long time ago Berlusconi. And even though those two said, because they don't really like the idea of a young woman getting to power, they said that, well, I'm the one who's the person to create a cabinet. It's very obvious that she's the one who's going to do it. I have Italian friends who usually voted for the Christian Democrats, and they say she is centro-destra, which means centre-right, and not destra, which in Italy does mean the extreme right. We'll see whether she succeeds. There are many reasons why she shouldn't. She might not, just because, not that she shouldn't, but she might not, just because Italy is an historic state. And it's lasted for a very long time in that sort of state. But a few more things before I talk too long. She has committed to supporting Ukraine, and she has made it a condition to any political coalition with Salvini's Lega and with Berlusconi's Forza Italia that they support NATO helping Ukraine. So for those doubts of people who say that she would be like other hard right leaders in Europe who unfortunately support Putin, she's not one of them.
Well, what's interesting is her focus on the family. Italy is kind of mired in deathbed demographics. I think 1.2 is the fertility rate, which basically means that the number of Italians is halving with every generation. We think of Italians as being full, compared to the stiff upper lip Brits, as being full of big gregarious family, the big Italian mama spooning out the pasta and passing it down the table to all the kids and the cousins and the aunties and uncles, and that Italy has gone. And she thinks it would be nice to put Italy back in the family business.
She certainly does. And one of the reasons that people do not have large families in Italy is that it's very difficult to have a large family because housing is difficult to find. People stay with their parents until age 30, not because they want to, but because affordable housing has become difficult to find, because it's become more difficult to find a job in the past 20 years. And the usual reasons why people don't have children, I don't think it's any more than that. And she advocates policies that people say, oh, these are Viktor Orban's policy in Hungary to sort of, fewer taxes for people who have several children, help for citizens who have large families. But these were the policies of General de Gaulle and of France before General de Gaulle, but after the Second World War, the country had been depopulated, and France is a country that always had those natalist policies of helping families to very well. The problem is now in many cases, the only people who have many large families in France are families who are on benefits. So the whole thing is a bit changed, and who've come to France for those benefits, and that has changed many things. But the natalist natalist policy was never something criticized until some people in Europe started doing it.
Now, as you pointed out, she's actually the first elected prime minister in the last half dozen, but apparently that makes her the fascist, whereas the totally unelected European Commission, in order to save democracy, is going to screw over the people's choice. Is Madame von der Leyen serious about doing this to the newly elected government?
I think Ursula von der Leyen, first of all, you have to know which question she was answering on this. And she was answering a question on support for Putin. And she said, if this happens, which I personally do not believe will happen because it would be the opposite of every electoral campaign that got Giorgia Meloni elected, that's very specific. But she has realized that the optics of saying that, even on one issue, were very bad, and there has been some sort of backtracking. This was a perfectly democratic election. It was just, the voting booth was sort of surrounded from early in the morning. People thought, okay, we're going to have someone different. If they don't like Meloni, they will kick her out and she will go.